And so welcome everyone. My name is Tanya Miller Hall. I am the Senior Advisor for Arts and Culture here for the Mayor's Office. And to kick us off before Mayor Scott starts, we're gonna bring up Easy Jackson to perform a spoken word piece called Until.
Until you do right by we. Greetings, brothers, sisters, and descendants of Black excellence. My name is Thurgood Marshall. In 1954, I decided I'm not playing with y'all. I'm not staying afar, I'm raising the bar. See, people find complacency in places we ain't to be. When the power structure says sit down, some will say, okay, I don't like it, but I'll stay. I said, no way. I find it cute that you named an airport after me, but many of my people still suffer, segregated, uneducated, frustrated, with systemic boundaries that were long ago legislated. I never waited for someone else to pick up the torch. I jumped off the porch, sick of sidelines signifying you have your speeches while my people dying. Honor me not with your humility, for your search for stability lies in action. Results, we chose to revolt, not through violence but intelligence, not through silence but relevance. We are Black and as American as the peanut butter we invented. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's crunchy. Sometimes it's city, sometimes it's country. But baby, you can't avoid the sweet blackberries created the jam. And until you do right by we, my voice will echo. I wanted to see victory. Out of my 32 civil rights cases, I won 29. Them white people were sick of me. But why should I have cared? If some of my people are scared, who would tell them to dare? To be fearless in spite of the pressure, to see clearly in spite of whatever. Until you do right by we, the chickens will come home to roost. The guns will continue to shoot. The blood-stained streets will be dried by the sun, and the work will continue to get done. Until you do right by we, the people, the powerful, the bold, the beautiful, the strange and unusual, from our braids to our cuticles, we stood the test of time. When you celebrate me, know I did more than try. I achieved, I lived, I died, and still I survive. We survive until.
Thank you, Easy. Seeing those July in Baltimore, I thought you were going to remind people that a Black man invented air conditioning, because we definitely need it today. Thank you, everyone, and thank you all for joining us here this afternoon for this great occasion. I want to take a moment to all the folks who helped make this event possible. Tanya Miller, who you've heard from already. Dana, where's Dana? Oh, Dana Moore, our Director of Equity and Civil Rights. Dr. Hathaway, Pops, as he's known to me. And Pops, we have 100 kids going to Junior Olympics this year. Ernest Shaw, Easy Jackson, LaRon Finney, because we know that one of the things that makes Baltimore so unique is our deep, rich Black history and culture. This city is the birthplace of pioneers, civil rights leaders, and founders, strong Black families who created institutions specifically for the advancement of colored people, and who Black people who have from Baltimore, lived in Baltimore, has changed not just this country, the world, throughout its history. You will not, and we always say there is always a Baltimore angle, and there's always a Black Baltimore angle to any great story. Many of us can relate to the humble beginnings of Thurgood Marshall, but is a testament to the fact that one person's life can inspire generations of leaders and advocates who have the same courage and the same fierce determination to stand up and speak out about injustices in our society and dedicate their lives to a cause that will change the lives of so many others. I'm thankful to the vision of Dr. Hathaway to celebrate our legendary Baltimorean on what would have been his 115th birthday that happened a few days ago. And we're all excited to see the great work of Ernest Shaw, as always. But most importantly, I want you all to know that we will showcase this work of art right here in City Hall until June of 2024 for all to see and be inspired, especially the young folks that will come in and ask, Mr. Mayor, who's that on the picture? And we'll be able to tell them the story about how they're going to school in the new 21st century schools, all go back to the work of this great man. Thank you again, and now I will turn it over to the Dr. Reverend Hathaway. Sir?
The mayor's from that generation of iPads. I'm from that generation of paper. Thank you, Mayor Brandon Scott, Faith Leach, Tanya Miller. She said Tanya Miller, now it's Tanya Miller Hall, so something happened over since I first met you. Oh, okay, all right. And team for causing this portrait by Ernest Shaw of Justice Thurgood Marshall to be available to the people of Baltimore City. It is quite appropriate that it first be displayed in Baltimore City Hall. Just want to tell you, we are restoring the school that he attended, which is PS 103, which is there in the 1300 block of Division Street. The architect and designer of that was George Fredericks. The architect and designer for City Hall that we're in was George Fredericks as well. And so we are just excited. I think it's very appropriate. Sunday, July the 2nd, 2023, we held the 115th birthday celebration of Justice Thurgood Marshall at the Baltimore Museum of Art. It was well attended and included the voices and presence of Baltimore City public school students. They displayed their talent through visual art. Students from the Furman Templeton Academy, the historic Samuel Coleridge Taylor Elementary School, were winners of the first annual Thurgood Marshall Art Contest, sponsored by WJZ TV 13 and Beloved Community Services Corporation. Mayor Scott, earlier you recognized the talents of students from Hamilton Elementary School who produced a mural of Justice Marshall. In fact, it hung right here, won its first prize, and it hung in City Hall. I want you to know that Beloved Community acquired that. We acquired that portrait. They were surprised. They didn't know that they were artists, and we say, hey, how much you want to sell your, they didn't know you're supposed to sell your artwork. You don't give it away. And so we bought it from their students, and that art will hang in the Justice Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center. Mayor Scott, you participated in the groundbreaking of PS 103 last year on July the 2nd, 2022. I want you to know we will be substantially complete that building in December of this year. But we're going to hold off for the grand opening because the grand opening will be on July the 2nd, Thurgood Marshall's birthday, which will be his 116th birthday year, and it will be a national celebration. On that day, people will be able to see the restoration of the school. We will formally dedicate the Justice Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center at PS 103 Henry Highland Garnett. The portrait by Ernest Shaw will be prominently hung on the second floor hallway of the Justice Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center. And we're so proud of this work. Its title is appropriate, Until You Do Right by We. I present to you the portrait's artist, Mr. Ernest Shaw.
So I'm not a talker, so we're gonna make this quick, right? How the piece was acquired, there's a very interesting story, and I thought Reverend Dr. Hathaway was going to tell that story, but he didn't. So this is the first iteration of another piece that hangs in Annapolis. I was commissioned by Senator Will Smith, Montgomery County, to paint a portrait of a young Thurgood. So I had to do some research. I read Professor Larry Gibson's book, Young Thurgood, among other things. And this is the first iteration. Now, interestingly, when you see it, you're going to put a specific hand gesture together with the title. And some of you who are familiar with Alice Walker's work, which was made into a film called, I'm a school teacher too, so I like, okay, The Color Purple, right? and a certain character named Seeley was speaking to a certain individual, and we all know this, right? We know this, okay. So in the portrait, you'll see a certain hand gesture that was mistakenly depicted as, you know, if you have any relatives from North South Carolina, you know. So I had to paint another portrait as a byproduct of that, and as the universe or the good Lord would have it, Reverend Hathaway reached out to my mother, and long story short, he ended up with the piece. So I want to thank Reverend Hathaway for not just assisting me in sharing this piece with the community and with Baltimore, but also with the wonderful work he's doing in the community. I also grew up on Division Street, like Justice Thurgood Marshall. So I would like to thank Reverend Hathaway, LaRon Finney, Dr. Leslie King Hammond, Senator Will Smith, Professor Gibson, and my mother, of course. Because I used to sit at her feet on Division Street and literally watch her paint. And she's also a student, a former student of PS 103. So, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from our Chief Equity Officer, Director Moore.
I'm a paper person also. So I've been asked to speak real briefly about the impact of the legacy of Justice Thurgood Marshall. So I wanted to start with the numbers. And any students here, I invite you to do the research afterwards. So all right, here are the numbers. 84 years. That's 84 years of life, from January 2nd, 1908 to January 24, 1993. 2 HBCUs. Anyone know the colleges that he attended? Yes, Lincoln University and the Howard University School of Law. 29, Easy mentioned this, 29 cases out of 32 argued in front of the United States Supreme Court, SCOTUS, 29 that he won. 4 years as a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. 2 years as Solicitor General. Anyone know what the Solicitor General does? Represents the United States before the SCOTUS. He did that for 2 years. 24, and this is where we really get the feel and the impact of his legacy. 24 years as an Associate Justice on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, the first African American to hold such a seat. For me, one of his lasting legacies is Brown versus Topeka Board of Education, decided in 1954. And for me, that is because both of my parents are from Topeka, Kansas. And they would talk often about their life pre-Brown and post-Brown. And there is a clear demarcation. The Brown versus Topeka Board of Education case established for all that separate is inherently unequal. Remember that if you do nothing else from this little talk, separate is inherently not equal. He became one of the greatest dissenters on the Supreme Court, and that's important. Easy mentioned it. You said it a little different than I'm saying it, but you said the same thing. Not playing with you anymore. I'm not playing with you anymore. It's not right. I have a voice. You sent me here. I have something to say. I don't agree with the way that things are. It's my job to change it. And all of you from the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, it's your job to change it. All of you that work in the city of Baltimore, if you see things that aren't right, it's your job to change it. That's our duty. That's our mandate. Reverend Al. Where's the mayor? Oh, yeah. Mayor Scott. The real legacy that I see is a thread that goes from Thurgood Marshall to you and to you, Mayor Scott. And that's the legacy of loving our children so much that we are willing to put our everything in the way of trouble for those children. Just think about that. Justice Thurgood Marshall did that. He put his very body, his brain, in front of the laws that would have said, there is no equity. There is no equity. Thank you for this. Reverend Al, I've seen you. I know how much you care for children. I know how you create opportunity because you did it for mine. I know how important it is to you. And that's why the Amenity Center is coming to life, because of your passion for our children. They're our children. And Mayor Scott, I have watched you every hour of your term as mayor, and most importantly, in the most recent days, and I know how much you care. I know how much, when our children hurt, he hurts. I know that the legacy of Thurgood Marshall, of putting ourselves in front of trouble, is in our mayor, and it's in Reverend Al, and it really has to be in front of all of us. We can't stand in this beautiful rotunda before this portrait that's about to be unveiled and not be changed in our hearts by the mandate to care for our children. That is the legacy. We all have it, we all carry it, and we all have to carry out that duty. So thank you for bringing this to Baltimore, to City Hall, and letting us all see it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Before we do the unveiling, I want to recognize our Comptroller Bill Henry, Councilman Bullock, and Councilman James Torrance. I see Deputy Delegate Kaylin Young is here. Of course, our City Administrator, Faith Leach, and our fabulous Inspector General. Because we're going to move the podium in a second, we're going to take any questions from the media now. Mackenzie, you got questions? Now, do it now or forever hold your peace. It should be on. Oh, it is too tall, yeah. Right.
That I'm used to. Thank you.
Too good.
Speaking of what happened over the weekend, I know that there have been conversations about policy changes within some agencies, especially when it comes to Monzi and Safe Streets workers who were there and responded earlier during the day to multiple people who were there with guns. Do you think that the policy should have been in place already to ensure that somebody, not necessarily BPD, was alerted, because I understand the importance of keeping the Safe Streets workers safe, but somebody should have been alerted to ensure that BPD was aware, and should that policy have been in place earlier?
I think what I will say to you again, Mackenzie, I know we've been talking about this, and everyone wants to scrutinize every second of what happened out there, which is exactly what me and my team are doing, not just for Monzi, not just for BPD, for HABC, every single city agency, even the quasis that have anything to do with Brooklyn Homes. We're going to look at everybody, what they knew, when they knew, how they knew, what exact millisecond they knew it, and go back from there. And what we're going to do is then make any changes to policy for anybody, right? Whether that's BPD, Monzi, HABC, from those conversations and what we learn. But again, I think it's critically important for us to remember and always talk about the reality is that some individuals decided to do this, right? We cannot remove the responsibility from those who actually pulled the trigger. We are going to do that work of going to see what agencies could have done and done differently. But I want to also remind of us all of the facts of the reality that we have seen people shoot people 5 feet away from police officers, right? So we're going to do everything in our power to see what needs to change and what could have changed and what people could have done differently. But the most important thing for us to do right now, and the most important thing that we all should be focused on, is getting people to say who actually pulled the trigger so that we can put them in jail.
If that's the case, do you still believe that Safe Streets is effective?
We know Safe Streets is effective, right?
After this, how can you say that?
Well, I could say many things after this, right? I think that when when you have an event like this, right, we don't say that the U.S. military is ineffective because 9/11 happens. So when you say, you know, somebody decides to go and blow up a building, and then we say, well, we must get rid of all of our federal intelligence agencies because this happened. That's just an idiotic way of thinking. We're talking about individuals who make individual decisions. We don't say when someone pulls out a gun and shoots somebody 5 feet from a police officer that we need to get rid of police, right? This Safe Street should be treated the same way because they have that impact. It's been proven time and time again, not just here in Baltimore, that community violence intervention works. And we know from the study that we just had by Johns Hopkins, right, one of the highest regarded institution on this planet that we call Earth, that the program works, and we're going to continue to support it because it works. And it's also important to know when you're talking about Safe Streets workers, you're talking about humans, people who live in that neighborhood, right? They are traumatized just as much as everyone else is because they don't just work there, they live there. Their families live there, and we have to treat them with the same respect that we treat anyone else. Thank you. Hold on, sorry, man, my bad. Go ahead. Yeah, you're good. You're good now. I cut the podium off. You're good.
Kevin Richard with the Baltimore Sun. I was out at Brooklyn Homes this morning, and many of the families, thank you for bringing the 3 mobile units out there for the health department, the job mobile, and also the peace mobile. One of the questions that many of them asked was, what are some of the programs, and this sort of coincides with what we're talking about today, what are some of the programs you're going to bring in for the kids?
Yeah, so we actually, this is stuff that we're developing with them. So the job mobile is there because we had a community meeting and say, what resources with the community and leaders, the residents there, what resources do you want to see here? That was the first thing they talked about. We're talking about getting, actually, I met a fabulous young man who walked with me and showed me everything. A 10-year-old young boy showed me everything that was wrong with his community yesterday. He pointed out to me windows that were busted at his new school, utility covers that were missing, lights that were covered up, cars that were stolen and illegally dumped, right? So we're talking for him and his counterparts of getting them into our summer camps that are available not too far, figuring out ways we're going to bring, I don't know who made a decision years ago to remove the basketball courts from Brooklyn Homes, but they're coming back and talking with our partners in HUD and otherwise to see what we can do with the community. But it's going to be community driven. So the things that you see are there because the community requested them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. 3, 2,